Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my predecessor addressed this committee last February, noting in her address that the rights of Palestinian people in the OPT had never been so jeopardized and violated. And the very agency which was established by the General Assembly was also in great danger. Today, I come to you with the same message, but in a situation where the most fundamental right of Palestinians in the OPT, the right to life, is under threat. The situation of UNRWA, highlighted by my predecessor last February, has worsened politically, logistically, and financially. Last week, on World Humanitarian Day, UNRWA Commissioner General paid tribute to our frontline colleagues, saying, and I quote, "Since the war began, UNRWA staff have paid a heavy price. Over 360 personnel have been killed, several in the line of duty. Hundreds have been injured. Nearly 50 personnel have been arrested or detained, and some were tortured before their release. Our staff are not giving up, despite the hell they experience daily," end quote. As mentioned earlier this year in the committee, the Israeli legislative and administrative measures enacted since late 2024 have constituted a systematic effort to dismantle UNRWA's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory. These have included the banning of UNRWA in East Jerusalem, the imposition of a no-contact policy, the exclusion of international staff, and obstruction of aid delivery, violating United Nations privileges and immunities, and Israel's obligations under international law. These actions have obstructed UNRWA's ability to deliver life-saving assistance and stripped the agency of the legal protections required to operate in the OPT. Mr. President, I've been asked to provide further details on the situation in the OPT. In Gaza, as of the 19th of August, there were 900 incidents impacting UNRWA premises and the people inside them. 311, or nearly all, UNRWA installations have been impacted by armed conflict-related incidents since the beginning of the war, with some installations impacted multiple times. UNRWA estimates that in total, at least 845 persons sheltering in UNRWA installations have been reported killed, and at least 2,554 injured since the start of the war. At least 189 UNRWA installations, over half of all UNRWA installations in the Gaza Strip, are located within the Israeli militarized zone, under displacement orders or where these overlap. And according to the latest report from our education cluster, almost every school in the Gaza Strip has sustained some form of damage. 1/3 of the affected schools are operated by UNRWA, underscoring the severe impact on UN-managed education facilities and the broader vulnerability of the humanitarian infrastructure. UNRWA has not been allowed to bring any humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, including food, medicine, and medical supplies for nearly 6 months now, since the 2nd of March. In the occupied West Bank, including in East Jerusalem, 6 schools in East Jerusalem were closed by Israeli authorities in May 2025, gravely undermining the right to education and leaving 800 children with a lack of viable educational alternatives. Over 206,000 Palestine refugees in East Jerusalem face the loss of services if enforcement of the Knesset legislation is intensified. UNRWA was also compelled to evacuate its compound in Sheikh Jarrah after decades of use. Currently, 10 schools, 3 health centers remain closed in Jenin, Tulkarm, and Nur Shams in the northern West Bank. UNRWA has been able to pivot all health services to camp residents to different locations. However, 4,600 students from 3 camps have had no access to regular education since February 2025. Currently, no access is possible to the 3 camps due to the continued presence of Israeli forces. In the Lebanon, poverty among Palestine refugees has stagnated at very high levels, hovering between 70% and 80%. Legal restrictions on forms of employment and access to public services mean they are therefore highly dependent on UNRWA for education, health services, and the provision of basic infrastructure. At a time when we are seeking to demilitarize the camps, UNRWA's vital and indispensable service provision must continue at full capacity. In Jordan, doctors are attending to an average of 73 patients per day, allowing 3 to 4 minutes per consultation. Only 13.4 Palestine refugees from Syria were reached with cash assistance in the first half of 2025 due to our funding shortfalls. Staff salaries continue to be confirmed on a month-by-month basis. UNRWA has implemented strict cost-saving measures. These measures, while necessary, are taking a tangible toll not only on the well-being of our colleagues, but also on the quality of services provided to refugees. Mr. President, Excellencies, at this stage of the financial year, we know that UNRWA will be able to maintain operations until the end of September 2025, provided all donors disburse their contributions on time and in full. Our income forecasts show that UNRWA will be able to cover only 6 days of operations in October and November. The financial outlook for the first quarter of 2026 is bleak, with very limited income projected. As of last month, only 4.3% of required funding had been received for emergency appeal in the OPT, 7.4% for Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. Forgive me if I highlight the financial crisis in this committee, but it is of a magnitude we have not seen yet. The ability for the agency to continue into 2026, even if we maintain our operations this year, is at serious risk. Mr. President, Excellencies, efforts to defund, delegitimize, or dismantle UNRWA are an erosion of refugee rights and a direct threat to peace and stability in the region. What we are witnessing is a reflection of the violence and violations inflicted on Palestinians. In such times, I wish to bring to you the words of an UNRWA colleague in Gaza a few days ago. I quote, "I was injured in the war. Nevertheless, I continue to work with determination. I believe that my mission is not limited to providing services. but rather instilling hope and dignity in the hearts of exhausted people, end quote. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, UNRWA holds profound political resonance as the last institutional embodiment of the international community's commitment to the rights of Palestinian refugees in the absence of a political solution. UNRWA has played an indispensable role in promoting regional stability, the protection of refugee rights, and sustaining community resilience. Until such a political resolution is achieved, UNRWA's unique role as the custodian of Palestine refugee rights and legal identity must be sustained and enhanced at a time when these are under attack. To enable Palestine refugees to claim their right of return, to preserve the foundations for a just and durable political solution. Today, and allow me, sir, to thank once again France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for co-chairing the International Conference on the Two-State Solution. There is hope again in the midst of horrific nightmares unfolding in Gaza. The recognition of the State of Palestine by several member states and the New York Declaration on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution is an historic opportunity for the international community. Following an end to hostilities, UNRWA is the largest organization still holding up in Gaza today, and is the only entity that can provide a structure for basic public services in the future. I conclude, Mr. President, with a reiteration of my predecessor's appeal to this committee last February. First, push back on the implementation of the Knesset legislation and against any violation of the privileges and immunities of an UN organization. Let us do our work. Second, we insist on a genuine political path that delineates UNRWA's continuing role as a provider of education, healthcare, and ensuring a viable political transition. And finally, and no less important, ensure that the financial crisis does not abruptly end UNRWA's life-saving work. We cannot continue to operate in the face of extraordinary challenges without adequate resources. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, for over 75 years, UNRWA has been a stabilizing force and a committed partner for peace in the occupied Palestinian territory. It must be allowed to remain so until a political solution is at hand. I thank you.